When slow cookers first hit countertops, dinner could simmer while families worked, worshipped, or carpooled home. Cheap roasts turned tender, packets stood in for patience, and potlucks filled with set-and-serve pans. Tonight, we're revisiting 25 real crockpot dinners from that first boom, humble, dependable, and still worth making for busy nights. 1. Cola pot roast with onions. Beef chuck went into the crock with sliced onions and a sweet, savory shortcut that felt like magic. A pour of cola met a can of pantry gravy or condensed soup, turning tough fibers tender and the whole kitchen warm. The lid went on before work or errands. The clock did the rest. Some browned the meat first, many didn't. Either way, the broth deepened as carrots and potatoes soaked it up. It made sense because chuck was affordable, onions were cheap, and supermarket mixes promised dinner with almost no fuss. By evening, the roast pulled apart with a fork, the gravy glossy and familiar. It tasted like Sunday on a Tuesday, a small celebration that didn't require hovering over a stove. Served on plates that steamed while kids compared daybook stories and someone sliced a heel of bread to chase the last bit of sauce. 2 Italian beef sandwiches, pepperoncini style. Here the slow cooker turned a humble roast into pile-high sandwiches with a Chicago spirit. The roast met dry Italian dressing mix, pepperoncini brine, and onion, then spent the day easing into its own juice. By dinner time it shredded beautifully, juicy, tangy, and ready for rolls. It worked because jarred peppers and packet mixes lived in every 1970s cupboard, and chuck still fit a budget. The crock handled the long braise without scorching, giving you hours to commute, cheer practice, or choir night. Serving was theater, soft rolls, ladles of jus, a tangle of peppers, maybe a slice of provolone if payday allowed. The meaning lived in the build-your-own moment, plates circling, napkins stacked high, and laughter over whose sandwich dripped more. It was potluck-friendly, football-friendly, and weeknight forgiving, proof that a countertop pot could echo a beef stand line. 3. Chicken dumplings, biscuit dough hack. This was Grandma's comfort run through a 1970s pantry. Bone-in chicken or meaty pieces simmered with onion and condensed soup until the broth turned creamy and the meat loosened its grip on the bone. Near the end, biscuit dough, pinched from a can, went in as dumplings, puffing and settling into the gravy. The trick made sense. Canned soup stood in for a roux, and canned biscuits saved time and counter space. It meant a Sunday taste from a Tuesday plan with no standing at a stovetop. When the lid lifted, steam met the room like a hug. Bowls took a ladle of thick broth, a piece of chicken, and a dumpling or 3, peppered at the table. The memory was the sound. Spoons clinking, someone fishing for the largest dumpling, and that comfortable quiet that follows the first bite. A little faith in the pot, a lot of return in the bowl. The porcupine meatballs, rice-studded meatballs nestled in tomato gravy, looked playful and ate like a classic. Ground beef mixed with rice stretched a pound to feed a crew, and the slow cooker swaddled everything in a gentle simmer until the rice swelled and the meat turned tender. Some browned the meatballs first for flavor, others dropped them straight into sauce. Either path worked because canned tomatoes were cheap, rice was steady, and the low heat protected against crumbling. The name made kids grin. The texture brought them back for seconds. It fit the era. Thrift dressed up as novelty, with pantry items doing the heavy lifting. By supper time, the sauce clung to noodles or mashed potatoes. The meatballs held together and the table leaned in. It was a dish that invited seconds without worry. A midweek win that turned tight budgets into full plates and easy compliments. 5. Pepper steak with onions. Sliced beef, bell peppers, and onions carried a hint of takeout when takeout wasn't in the cards. Strips of round steak went into the crock with a soy tomato gravy built from bottled sauce and pantry staples. The pot softened the meat while leaving peppers for later, so they kept a bit of life. It made sense because lower-cost cuts gained tenderness over hours, and bottled sauces delivered dependable flavor without a long ingredients list. Served over rice or buttered noodles, it felt lively on a quiet night. Color in the bowl, savory sweet in the air. The memory sits in the steam that rushed up when the lid tipped, in the shine on the peppers, and the way a fork slid through the beef without complaint. It was weeknight worldliness from a kitchen corner, proof a slow cooker could travel without moving an inch. 6. Salisbury steak with mushroom gravy. Beef patties turned into a supper that tasted like comfort and looked like a TV dinner memory scaled up for a family table. Patties slid into the slow cooker with sliced onions, and a can or two of mushroom soup melted down into a silky gravy while everyone was at work or school. Some home cooks seared the patties first for a little browning. Others trusted the long simmer to do the softening. Either way, the result was spoon-tender beef and an onion mushroom sauce that clung to noodles or bread heels. It made sense because canned soups were inexpensive, reliable thickeners, and the slow cooker kept everything from scorching while turning budget ground beef into something company-worthy. The meaning lived in the steam that lifted when the lid came off, in the hush at the first bite, and in the way plates circled back for just a little more gravy, proof that easy could still feel special. Thor's honey garlic chicken thighs. This was the sticky sweet supper that asked almost nothing and gave a lot back. Thighs, cheap, forgiving, and hard to overcook, went into the pot with a pantry trio of honey, soy, and garlic. Over the afternoon, the sauce mellowed and deepened, turning into a glaze that lacquered the chicken without anyone babysitting a pan. A quick stir near the end, maybe a splash of the juices over rice, and dinner felt intentional, not improvised. It worked because thighs fit tight budgets and the flavors came straight from shelves most kitchens already had. The memory is the shine on the chicken, the tug of a fork as meat slipped free, and the way kids reached for seconds without prompting. Little effort, big payoff, weeknight arithmetic that made sense when schedules ran long and the grocery money had to stretch. Diat, apricot, French dressing, chicken bright. Tangy sweet and very 1970s, this church cookbook favorite turned bottled dressing and a jar of jam into a signature potluck plate. Pieces of chicken settled into the slow cooker under a pour-over sauce built from orange apricot preserves, a tangy salad dressing, and a whisper of dry soup mix. The heat did the blending, smoothing sharp edges into a glossy glaze that clung to every bite. It made sense because the three-bottle era prized speed and consistency, familiar labels, predictable results, and colors that sold dinner before a fork was lifted. By serving time, the chicken was tender, the sauce spooned like a promise, and the room smelled like a fundraiser table lined with foil pans. The meaning sits in nostalgia, usher boards, folding chairs, paper plates, and in the easy way a few shelf-stable items turned into a dish, people remembered by flavor and by story, long after the last helping. Swedish meatballs, creamy, cozy, and just fancy enough for company, this slow cooker take made crowd service simple. Meatballs, homemade on a good weekend or pulled from the freezer on a busy one, went into the pot with onions and a mushroom-scented base. Hours later, a dollop of sour cream at the end turned the sauce velvety and pale, ready to slide over egg noodles or mashed potatoes. It made sense because the crock kept meatballs moist without splitting your attention. Canned soup-trimmed steps and a late spoonful of dairy kept things from curdling. The memory lives in the way serving spoons disappeared into the pan, in noodles tangled with sauce, and in the around the table that said you'd made the right choice. It felt a little continental, a little party, and fully weeknight manageable. Exactly the kind of dish that kept the slow cooker on the counter, not in a cabinet. 10. Cocktail meatballs, grape jelly plus chili sauce. What started as an appetizer turned into an effortless dinner with rice or soft rolls close by. Meatballs soaked in a 2-jar sauce, sweet from grape jelly, lively from chili sauce, until the flavors met in the middle and the kitchen smelled like a holiday open house. The slow cooker did the mingling while you handled everything else, holding the pot warm through seconds and thirds. It worked because the shopping list was short, the prep was a pour, and the payoff was bigger than the effort. Families used leftovers for sandwiches, spooned the sauce like glaze, and called it a win. The meaning is social as much as culinary. Church basements, game day buffets, and potlucks where the ladle never stopped moving. On a regular Tuesday, it turned into dinner that felt like an occasion. Sweet heat on a small budget, shared at a table that didn't mind a little sticky on the fingers. 11. Country-style BBQ pork ribs. This was the taste of summer pulled from a countertop pot, all year long. Country-style ribs, boneless or nearly so, went into the slow cooker rubbed or sauced, left to simmer until the meat barely clung to the bone. A quick brush of extra barbecue sauce near the end gave that glossy finish everyone wanted. It made sense because rib value packs were cheap, bottled sauce was everywhere, and the slow cooker turned what needed hours of tending into a hands-off success. For city kitchens without a yard or grill, it brought the smokehouse indoors in spirit if not scent. The meaning sits in the first tug of the fork, in the way the sauce stains bread on the side, and in the relief that dinner took care of itself. Families called it barbecue weather even when snow was in the window. Thawham Great Northern Beans, a Monday pot with Sunday's echoes, this dish carried thrift and comfort in one ladle. Leftover ham bones or hocks met dry Great Northern beans, maybe an onion, and water enough to forget about for hours. The slow cooker coaxed everything into creamy tenderness without stirring, the bone releasing salt and smoke until every bean took on its memory. It made sense because beans cost little, hocks were scraps, and no meal stretched further for less. The meaning lingers in how it filled both stomach and time, served with cornbread, reheated for lunches, frozen for another stretch. It was Depression logic reborn through 1970s convenience, same nourishment, no standing over a stove, and a smell that pulled neighbors to ask what was cooking. The beef barley soup, this was the steady one, the soup that kept its promise. A handful of soup bones, maybe a scrap of stew meat cooked all day with onion, carrot, and barley until the broth turned deep and the grain turned creamy. Whether browned first or not, the slow simmer built flavor hour by hour, the barley thickening without complaint. It made sense because barley was inexpensive, hearty, and filling, and the slow cooker gave bones enough time to give everything they had. Served in mugs, thermoses, or chipped bowls, it followed truckers, school lunches, and night shift thermos lids alike. The memory lives in the fog of steam on glasses, the clink of spoons, and the way this soup quietly erased the day's chill. It wasn't glamorous, it didn't need to be. It was honest food that showed up and stayed warm. 14. Chicken tetrazzini, crock version. Here, the slow cooker borrowed a bit of casserole culture. Leftover chicken met mushrooms, onions, and a sauce built from canned soups and a little broth, thickened slowly until creamy. Just before serving, cooked noodles folded in, turning it into a pasta bake without ever heating the oven. It made sense because every ingredient came from the pantry, and the result fed a crowd from what felt like scraps. It was a bridge club dish, a potluck dish, a ladies' luncheon dish that found new life in the modern appliance era. The meaning sits in the scent of mushrooms and nutmeg, in the clatter of forks over mismatched china, and in the satisfaction of something warm that asked so little: comfort, convenience, and connection. 3 things the slow cooker always delivered quietly. 15. Enchilada casserole, stacked tortillas. Southwest flavors met Midwest practicality in this layered favorite. Corn tortillas took the place of noodles, stacked with canned enchilada sauce, a bit of meat or beans, and cheese. As it simmered, the layers softened and blended into something between a lasagna and a stew, easy to scoop, easy to share. It made sense because tortillas and canned sauce stretched far, and the slow cooker kept things moist and ready when the church meeting or commute ran late. Some added olives or green onions. Others stayed simple, knowing it would feed whoever showed up. The meaning lives in the cross-country influences, a taste of borderland comfort landing in crockpots far from Texas. The pot hummed quietly while the world moved fast outside, reminding everyone that good food didn't need timing perfection, just a place to sit and a spoon to serve. 16. Tamale pie, slow cooker. A chili-style base simmered all day. Ground beef or beans with tomatoes, onion, and a mild hit of chili powder. So the flavors married while nobody watched the stove. Near dinner time, a quick cornbread batter went right over the bubbling surface, the lid went back on, and the top steamed and puffed into a golden lid you could spoon straight through. It made sense because pantry chili fixings and a box of mixed stretched meat filled plates and skipped the oven entirely on hot or busy nights. The memory is that first scoop that breaks the crust and pulls up saucy red beneath, steam on glasses, cornbread and chili in the same spoon, and a table that went quiet except for satisfied sighs. 17. Stuffed pepper soup. All the comfort of stuffed peppers without hollowing a single pepper. Tomatoes, onion, chopped green peppers, and a little ground beef poured into the crock and left to mingle until the peppers softened sweet. Rice went in late so it stayed tender, not mushy. It worked because canned tomatoes, bulk rice, and a bit of meat-made bowls feel generous on a budget. You didn't need perfect peppers. Broken pieces, freezer extras, or sale bin finds did fine. The meaning sat in the aroma that drifted down the hall: pepper, tomato, and something meaty, promising seconds. Ladled over a heel of bread, it tasted like a weeknight solved and a lunchbox ready for tomorrow. 18. Lentil sausage soup. Brown lentils, coins of smoked sausage, onion, carrot, and a bay leaf settled into a savory broth that thickened itself as the hours passed. A splash of vinegar or lemon at the end woke up the pot and made the lentils taste deeper. It made sense because dried lentils were pennies per serving and sausage stretched far, giving smoke and richness without much meat. You could skip sausage on tight weeks and still have a bowl with backbone. The memory is winter windows fogged from the steam, cracked pepper on top, and a second ladle without thinking. Quiet strength in a bowl that seemed bottomless and kind to every schedule. The white chicken chili. Tender shreds of chicken, white beans, mild green chilies, onion, and garlic settled into a gentle heat that felt cozy rather than hot. Near the end, a swirl of dairy, sour cream, a splash of milk, or nothing at all if you kept it lean, turned the broth silky. It worked because canned beans and chilies were supermarket regulars, and leftover rotisserie or yesterday's bird slipped right in. Tortilla chips or cornbread on the side turned it into a small celebration. The meaning lives in church basements and school gyms, potluck lines moving fast, kids going back for more, and a crock scraped clean long before cleanup started. 20. Chicken tortilla soup. A tomato chicken broth bright with chilies and corn simmered into a friendly red that asked for big ladles. Shredded chicken went soft and tender. Tortilla strips dropped in at the end, softened at the edges, but kept a little bite. Lime, if someone had it, sharpened everything with one squeeze. It made sense because canned tomatoes, frozen corn, and pantry spices built flavor while the crock handled the rest, and a small amount of chicken fed many. The memory is the rhythm at the table. Crunch, sip, crunch, plus the warm spice that lifted a gray evening. It tasted like sunlight in a bowl and gave everyone a reason to linger for one more spoonful. Next up, the takeout flavors, hoagie fillers, and a sundae pie that cooks while you're out. The boom worked because it borrowed grandmother's low and slow patience, then added supermarket shortcuts, packets, bottled sauces, canned goods, and affordable cuts. These humble crockpots sat quietly on counters while people went to work, ran errands, or helped with homework. They turned chuck roasts into Sunday flavor, canned beans into comfort, and leftovers into real dinners that didn't need watching. Every bubble under those glass lids meant time saved, money stretched, and one less reason to eat out. It was home cooking redefined for the era of shift work and busy families, steady, warm, and waiting. Which of these classics deserves a comeback in your kitchen? Porcupine meatballs, Italian beef, or ham and beans? Tell us your favorite slow cooker memory, the recipe that never failed, or the smell that filled your childhood kitchen. We're collecting the dinners that made life easier and the stories that made them matter. Drawn from 1970s, 1980s slow cooker booklets by rival and Better Homes Gardens, community and church cookbooks, and newspaper food pages of the era. Names, mixes, and timing varied by household. Adjust for modern food safety guidance.